One.
Good afternoon and welcome back to iProperty Live here at the National Construction Summit in Blanchardstown on the afternoon of day two. And I'm delighted to be joined by Martin Murray, Head of Business Development within Procon Modular. Martin, how has your experience been over the last day and a half?
Carol, great to talk. And it's been a really, really good show. A lot of heavy traffic, certainly yesterday. Today a little bit lighter, but a little bit more specific clients today who are looking to talk to the likes of companies like ourselves on the modular side. So a bit more of that, where yesterday was a little bit more overall on people just looking in that sense, where today was very specific and really, really good. I'm delighted the show. I think the show is getting better every year because it's growing and it's getting its reputation out there.
It's definitely growing year on year, and this is the first time since the crash that we've had a two-day construction summit. That's really interesting. Nobody else articulated it in the same way, but what you're saying makes sense because yesterday was very busy, great footfall, and that's fantastic. But today, actually, somebody did say they had three main contractors through that they were hoping to speak to. So that was today, when it's a day two of an event is always quieter. I wonder, is that the buyer's strategy? Go on day two so you don't have to fight for attention.
And I think that's what it actually is, because as we all know, time is money.
Yeah.
So for companies to have people out there, I think they're being very specific. And a lot of people realize that on shows, especially two-day shows, second day can tend to be a little bit lower profile.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it's an opportunity for buyers, and we've had a lot of even the supply line have been actually in with us today, where they weren't about yesterday. So I think they realize that little bit of foot traffic is lower, so consequently they're getting more time to talk to the likes of ourselves, and we've had it with clients as well, because we've had a couple of type of developers and a couple of financial type of people come talk to us today where they weren't about yesterday.
That's really interesting. Actually, that mirrors with what I've heard from some of the other exhibitors here today. So I'm just wondering, is that a strategy or a coincidence? But that's really interesting. Procon Modular, for anybody who isn't familiar with the work, tell us a little bit about the company.
We've been in business since 40 years, but probably in the last 5-6 years is where we've really type of grown. And that has been down to the Department of Education interim framework. So we've been on that, and we're lucky enough that we're actually the number one ranked company on it. So it means we get first shout at type of projects. And from that point of view, we've led into a particular project in Goatstown, Educate Together Secondary School, has now been nominated for the ICE Awards on
Amazing.
the second.
That's the Irish Construction Excellence.
It is
fantastic.
Indeed.
And that is with the highest bar in Ireland. So when is that awards coming up?
That comes up on the 1st of May, obviously in the Convention Centre. And the great thing about it, it's an education project. It's not specifically in modular. While we're a modular project, it's up against 3 other traditional projects. So it's been picked on the basis of it as a project and not directly down to it being a modular project. That has obviously helped it because of timelines and the speed of where we're able to put it in.
You've been in the MMC space for a long time. What do you think? So when you see, okay, here's a project delivered through modular, and it's a finalist in the highest level, the highest quality of category there for construction excellence against 3 traditional builds. What do you think we can infer about the I suppose offsite and MMC space in that?
That particular project was all about time. That became a big part of it with our client, the Department of Education. But from the judge's point of view, they looked at it as a project on its own standing, not necessarily offsite, but they looked at it initially as a project of its own identity. And then the fact that it was a modular and offsite manufacturing type of, that was a later type of thing from the judge's aspect of it. But they looked at it as a project, and that's where we would like to see the projects that are looked on as their own. Okay, offsite manufacturing is great, and that's what we want to bring, that we can achieve more and more. And that's what more we need more government buy-in to give, as we all want, pipelines.
Yeah. Let's talk about government buy-in for the moment. So right now we're still within that critical 100 days of government. And while we have a new government, it's a familiar government, have you seen the indications that you need? Because there have been the right soundings from government. There has been talk about MMC, but it's potentially not specific enough? We don't really know what the classification or what the extent, how pre-manufactured value may be calculated. You know, how heavy is the commitment there, despite what was mentioned in the programme for government? As somebody operating in the sector and trying to deliver in the sector, do you think that government policy is shifting in the direction we need it?
Certainly, there is more positivity towards it, but again, I would like to see a bit more action. We've heard a bit of this before in the previous government, while similar type of government, we've maybe a movement of ministers.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see in the sense of some where we're actually seeing it in actually projects or into frameworks, and I think that's the big thing that we all need is a couple of the Department of Education have an excellent framework. We need like maybe the HSC and other government bodies, Department of Housing, buying into frameworks that we can actually see that and we see where it's going forward. Where at the moment we're hearing a lot of talk in the media, on stage, where we need to see is actually in it to give the companies a pipeline. And especially what we've seen in the last 24 hours coming out of obviously America, what we need is now government supporting home-based companies all the more now. And this is where we need that, even in the likes of infrastructure, we need that rolled out more from government and into the likes of off-site manufacturing.
Martin, one thing I've noticed across a number of the stages, but particularly across the main stage and MMC, the MMC stage, modern methods of construction, I think there's a lack of understanding about how the frameworks work as a procurement model. So, for example, we need to look at what lessons we can take from the sectors who are procuring well and how that could be translated, whether at a central or local authority level, into, say, delivery of housing, but it works right across all sectors. So actually, what's the critical part that frameworks, how it operates and what it gets right, that procurement, traditional procurement has been maybe not facilitated?
What it does, one, from the manufacturing side, gives us a certain level of assurances and guarantees of what's going to happen over the term of that framework, be it a 2, 3 or 4 year type of term. So it gives us as a company, we know, right, we can upscale, we can maybe get new technology, we can, and the classic obvious look at that is the likes of Tony Woods with Midlands, because there was a strong pipeline that was there. They were able to put that additional capital in. Again, if we have the likes of that, we know the assurance of that's what we can do. We can put money, we can finance automation, we can finance SkillNet, which is what we're all trying to do as well, and that stuff there. But that comes from assurances of knowing the frameworks are actually there and the opportunities are there. We still know maybe you still have to maybe bid for some of that, but the fact that you're on the panel for that framework gives you a lot of assurances, gives you support. You know, if I'm going to the likes of Owen looking for additional capital to go to another show or to spend, he needs, why are we doing this and that? So we have assurances of frameworks. It gives so much, guarantees going forward.
Part of the remit of MMC Ireland is to grow the pipeline of work, because that's the only way to underpin the investment that's needed to actually scale up the capacity or to hit the potential of the capacity that even exists at the moment. And we had a bit of a conversation, the start of a conversation around that on the main stage earlier. But, we've referred to the government, the early soundings for government. Is there a danger that when we talk about growing the pipeline, because the industry has been ramping up capacity, industry is operating and tends to get there faster than policy? I worry, are we going to see something like we did with the data center sector, that actually we build up this indigenous expertise, there's nowhere for it to be used, and it gets exported, and then suddenly we're exporting all of our expertise? Is there a danger that could happen if the pipeline, if the state as the largest buyer of construction projects doesn't step up to do this and help grow the pipeline quicker?
That's always the danger. And going back to our nearest, and that's the UK. I think that's what happened in the UK. We've seen so many companies, especially in the modular side, go bust, is because of the so-called pipeline that was going to be there. Several companies massively increased our potential for factory. That pipeline didn't come, all of a sudden empty factories, and obviously companies gone out of business. I think in this country, we sometimes can be a little bit slower, and we can be a little bit guarded because we're always a little bit afraid. How many times have we seen this over the years? Companies have gone and then gone bust. That I think certainly the several modular companies are gradually enlarging themselves and building the production, but are not going too far. That potential of what you're saying,
Yeah.
then the pipeline's not here,
Yeah.
and we do end up having to go to the UK itself. We all want to do it here, but again, that comes down to pipeline. If we don't have pipeline here, we then do have to maybe look at, and obviously the UK market, as big as it actually is, gives a big upper way over there. But listen, we'd rather stay here.
Yeah.
I'm not traveling 4 days a week, as
Well, forget the logistics.
Paul would actually say. He wasn't how often did Paul?
Yeah.
I think he was saying it was 1 day a week or something.
Yeah.
He was like in Ireland.
Yeah.
That's hard to.
Well, it's also kind of a throwback to a time that probably we all remember not too long ago. I did a piece of, I did an event with the London Irish Construction Network recently, and it was really interesting to know the origins of that. Yeah. And it was from people who were running into each other essentially in the airports on a weekly or bi-weekly basis because they were traveling over to the UK for work. Yeah. And I was self-employed in this industry myself during that time. So I remember it all too well. So you're right, if we could just keep pace and get that pipeline growing and actually align with not just the capacity of the industry, but the ambitions of the industry. They want to do good things. Martin, as we're discussing this, I recall in this very venue last year, one of the highlights for me was that I had the opportunity to sit down and do a fireside chat with Owen Daly.
Yep.
And obviously the man behind Procon Modular. Yeah. And one of the really interesting points of discussion he raised with me that I've thought about a number of times over the year was around as the not just the project experience, but the expertise of the offsite and other modern methods of construction, and particularly modular, as that sector grows, where the position of the manufacturer will sit. So we had a conversation around, okay, is it as main contractor, or are we coming in as part of the supply chain? And it was interesting. I spoke to Deborah Smith of Express Group, Modular Express Group, earlier on the main stage, and she talked about her frustration as an early stage company not being able to get to the stage of project that she wanted to get. So they actually stepped in and became the developer. They went and got the funding on a small site and went in and essentially became the developer. But it again raises that question of, as the offsite and MMC sector grows and the expertise and the industry experience and project experience grows, that elevates the position of the manufacturers. Where do you think that is today? First of all, because I'm interested to see where it's going.
It's getting more and more where the client, especially government clients, Department of Education, HSE, they're looking at the likes of Procon Modular to be the main contractor. So they're looking for us to offer a turnkey package, and that's one of our big sells that we can actually do, because now they're dealing with one entity. They're dealing with ourselves. They're not having to deal with 2 or 3 subcontractors. We handle all that now for them. So going forward, 1 or 2, the government bodies are talking about design and build projects now. So again, that's where we want to be. We want to be in that space.
So that's where you want to be, because to me, that seems like a different level of risk than you might be operating at the moment, or that manufacturers would be operating at the moment. So is that something that Procon Modular can do because of how long established you are?
It is, and that's where you alluded to at the beginning, where Owen, as we're evolving and as we're developing, he's looking at particular experience and skill net people that we're bringing in. And probably one of the biggest that we have is our construction director, Paul Kennedy. Paul's been in the industry, same 25, 30 years, but he's at the forefront of, in the sense of doing the constructions, doing the designs. And so Paul has so much experience in that side of it. And it's great having a person of that ability. So that gives us as a company And Owen has obviously mentioned, like, reassurance. We have the special skills that we can actually handle that, and that's what we want to be.
Yeah.
We want to act as PSCS, and that gives the clients, again, as we said at the beginning, that gives clients assurances,
Yeah.
because they're dealing with only ourselves on behalf of them.
Yeah, no, I can see how that would be a win for them. Absolutely. And Joe, I'm conscious that you're the head of business development, and while you're sitting in here in the iProperty Radio studio, you can't be developing business out there. So I suppose final question: what can we expect to see from Procon Modular over the next number of years?
Our next thing, at the present moment, our concentration is on non-residential, but we know residential and housing for all is a big space, and it's more because the two are slightly different, but we are looking at that journey. And certainly the next thing we can see coming on the horizon from, again, government, is the purpose-built student accommodation. So that's leading into a certain level of the residential, while being slightly different, and that's where we're moving into. Well, we're moving into the residential, and we know in time. But what we don't want to do is jump too quick, where we're not ready for it, and we overexpose ourselves and we cause those problems. So we're hoping over the next 2 to 4 years to be growing into the student accommodation and then into the residential as well.
Well, look, thank you so much for taking time off the floor here at the National Construction Summit to come into the iProperty Radio studio. As I said, you're the head of business development for Procon Modular. So I know that you need to be out there and you're itching to get out there. So no problem. Martin, thank you so much. That was Martin Murray, head of business development with Procon Modular. And for anybody who is on site at the National Construction Summit, you're very welcome to head over to the Procon Modular stand. Thank you so much.